I had it muted. Peace, family. Happy Metaphysical Monday. Tonight, you guys, let me explain tonight. This isn't just like a regular where, I'm running late because of this and that. I literally was early today. I took my nap once I was able to. I had some work I had to do. I always have to prepare. And this is a day that I really don't do live readings. I may do like a phone reading, but whatever the case, today I was prepared early. I had an hour and a half left to get myself together. But today I was fasting. I fast every day, but I normally break the fast in the afternoon. I didn't do that today. It's not my first time, but today it actually got to me. So when I would have been getting dressed, I had to make me some food, something light, and just well, it wasn't that light because I ate me some grits, but I had some fruit and stuff like that with it, and that was pretty hearty. But I still had to take my bath, and because I got dizzy, I just waited. I had to wait. But I'm here now, you guys. Happy Metaphysical Monday, and right now nobody's watching anyway. I'm gonna put my comments on so I don't miss. Last week I missed some of my comments. But anyway, you guys, I already got my candles lit today. Normally, I light them on live, or sometimes they're burning already. But I already got my candles. I got my water vessel set, and I'm not gonna do too long of an intro because we have a long night tonight. But because I have time right now to get started, and then let's go ahead and I just want to get the live set with a good flow and chi. So yes, I'm here now. I don't know what that was about, other than the fact that I didn't eat. But I had to kind of laugh because I was thinking about the bill we did last Monday. I mean, that was on Saturday. About are you breaking the spell of reinforcing? I want to give a shout out to everybody that tapped in, to all my new subscribers. I got some new subscribers, you guys, from the promos. I hope you guys are actually tapping in and also getting a chance to watch the lives and all of the other content that I have. This has been a long journey. But I had to kind of laugh because, I could have sat here, because I was doing my spiritual cleaning of my house, and just regular cleaning as well. But I was doing my floors and spending a lot of extra time on doing the floors. Um, I had I was sweeping, doing the floors, setting up the my temple space, changing out my candles, my water, kind of pretty much what I do every day. But I was really working on a mix I made on my floors, and when I started feeling bad, I had kind of chuckled because I know some people can just go overboard, like because I was in a real good space. I'm not gonna lie. Once I was done with my cleaning, and I was like, "Ooh, I have plenty of time." It was just it was flowing perfectly. It was almost too perfect. I'm sitting in here. I'm listening to Erica Badu. I'm listening to her song Echoes 19, and I'm just feeling it. I'm just letting my floors dry. And then the thought crossed my mind once I started feeling bad. I got up to go find my clothes and stuff that I wanted to wear tonight, and I got really dizzy. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I could have been like, I started laughing because of this bill we had about am I breaking the spell or reinforcing it? And how people are just like, oh, somebody's working spells on me and just stuff like that. And I'm sitting here like, no, it's because you didn't eat. But I'm obviously joking. But sometimes I'm only bringing this up as an example of how we can begin to feed the force. Just adding on to what we talked about in our last build. You breaking a spell or reinforcing it. Now, say it was a situation where something was being thrown. You don't even have the energy to fight it anyway. But the point is, everything is not a spell. So let's go ahead and get into this Metaphysical Monday. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my breath meditations. So if you are watching at home, watching on your phone, however you're watching, you may even be driving or at work. You can actually meditate with me or just do the breaths with me, or you could just listen and, tap in, relax. So let's go ahead and get started. What I do is 3 deep breaths. I do 1 deep breath, and then when I hit the bowl like this, going to be 1 time. You slowly release, okay? We do that 3 times, and then we'll get started in our build, okay? So let's go ahead and take a deep breath through the nose, and we're releasing through the mouth, okay? Hold it. Now slowly release. Take another deep breath. Bring it up. All of the stress, all of the worries, whatever we dealt with, just hold it in, and we're going to release it at the sound of the chime. Slowly. And one last chime, or one last time, and one last chime. So take a deep breath. Hold it. And again, blow all of the stress away. Good vibes only. Inhale the good exhale the bad Slowly release. Let your shoulders down. Relax your face, all of that stuff. So I just like us to get relaxed, especially when we're going into, a heavy build, and just in general, but a heavy build such as this one. So, how did we get to Duat? Last Monday, I was speaking to, I've been in it to speaking a lot about the crucible, and I didn't speak about the crucible last Monday, but I've been going through a crucible. I went through a crucible, and then I wanted to speak about, this pressure cooker. I have been talking about that this year. The crucible energy was last year, in 2024, 2025. But this year, it's been more of like, after you come out the crucible and things began to get, smooth, and you're healing and recovering, you have your ups, you have your downs still, but for the most part, you are moving towards a new beginning. But then you have all of these external things that are taking place, that you have little to no control over, because even though the crucible is ended, it's still, it's like that inner crucible ended, but I still have all of this external stuff going on that also had to be shifted, also had to be broken down in a way. So it's like you're just sitting in this dark night of the soul, or it goes beyond the dark night of the soul, because now we're just, coping with the condition. This is the best way I can explain it. Like, say a person gets sentenced, to prison or something like that, right? Which is horrible, especially if that's not who you are, and, something happened and you end up in this horrific place in prison, this hell. And, when you first get there, or when you first get sentenced, that's going to be you know, one gateway or one passage where you have to cope with just that. Not even the fact of being caught and all of that, and interrogated and all of that. All of that is working up to this point of you being sentenced. And then once you get a hell of a sentence, or something that's very, uh, something that is almost unbearable to even think about. I mean, and honestly, being in prison any length of time, but if you haven't even, experienced anything like this, and they're telling you like 10 years or 20 years or whatever you feel, and it's going to be a time where you, feel like you're probably in a pit of no return. But then it comes a time where, even if say you're innocent, and you're fighting to get out, but it's like it's taking longer than you thought, just things aren't, really gelling. And then you get to a point where you may be resisting the environment, or resisting the change, or um, what is breaking down or breaking apart, or, abruptly shifting in our life, changes we didn't ask for, but maybe certain things, consequences, are um, whatever led us to be in a situation like that. Even if it feels like a setup, like somebody set me up, and those things really do happen. Um, but you're fighting for your innocence, and you're going to go through so many different layers. It's like we do in real life of this certain, levels of acceptance. So it doesn't mean it's all good and all hunky dory, but we just go through different levels, especially if you're a survivor, where, the darkness is still there, but you're not in the space of necessarily the same impact it had at the beginning. So you are basically in a place of traversing the darkness. It just reminded me of Duat, but I don't know what made me even go there, but that's just how I felt. It was like, oh, this energy when we're beyond the pressure cooker, you're already in a space when you're just weathering it, and it's not easing up. What if it takes you 6 months, a year, 2 years to get out of a space where you feel as if, or you are innocent. But here, it's not so much as about being innocent, because this is another way to look at it. When you've made so much effort, or you think that you're innocent, or you've shifted spiritually, or shifted things in your physical life, where you think that, or you feel at this point that the crucible, the hellish, states, or duat, or these spaces, and I'm using duat as a state of a certain existence, or condition that we may temporarily deal with on earth, that feels like the dark night of the soul, right? But sometimes we can't stop what's going on. It's how we react and how we're coping with the condition, right? So it just kind of reminded me of Duat. So I did the bill last week. I thank everybody for watching and for tapping in. For those who looked at the promo, on my different platforms. If you haven't seen it, please tap in and check it out. The Duat, we were talking about the journey of Ra, moving beyond the pressure cooker. That's there. And then there's also, again, the build I did the other day, which was Saturday. And this was a pop-up live. It's not a part of our Metaphysical Monday series, but it's still in that family. And this one was called Break the Spell, or Are You Breaking the Spell or Reinforcing It? So I'm gonna go ahead into this, and right now, I'm gonna just start. And there's no one here right now, and that's okay. We just want to continue, and as people come in, I'm gonna continue to talk. And if you just didn't get a chance to catch it from the beginning, you can always rewind it. Okay. Um. So we're going into the Duat, and what I was speaking about just now is why I chose to speak about the Duat. Well, I actually had a dream the other night, and what brought in the Duat is me talking about the crucible and just stuff like that. So I just wanted to kind of touch on it, but then people responded to it. I even had comments on my live asking about Duat and making comments about Duat. So what is Duat again? Duat is the underworld. Duat is the netherworld that Ra, um, the sun, in the, or this, if you want to say these, the son of God, like, but it's the son of Osiris and Aset. Ra is really even beyond that, though, but Ra is a form of Heru, but this is the journey of Ra, or the sun, the cycle of the sun, as told in our Kemetic beliefs, or ancient Egypt, and going deep into what Ra goes through on a nightly journey, because this is a nightly journey. It's like him going into the underworld every night in order to regenerate the sun that we see. Okay, so let's go ahead into the opening of this. Why light must traverse darkness? This brought up a lot for me. So, opening, what if light is the interruption? And I don't know, as I was kind of, because I go through this stuff, and I think about what I want to talk about. If it's something that need to be researched, I research it. If it's something that I just need to sort through, or challenge even my own thoughts, I do that. I write. I sometimes have to start over because I want to add stuff or take things away. So I had already wrote the piece for this, but the what if light is the interruption, it came up for me because I remember when I was studying Cometics, studying the laws of hermetics. Um, I was learning from my teacher then that light is the interruption of darkness or the natural order, right? And a lot of times people get dark and evil, they mix it together without actually having a real understanding of darkness and light, right? Or even darkness versus evil. So tonight I want to go into something we've already started talking about. I'm not going to start with the 12 hours of Ra right now. We're not going to talk about him getting into the solar bark, and also there may be a glossary of words that I use. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post them in the comments after the live uploads. Okay, once the live uploads, you can see it now, but it takes a little time on StreamYard sometimes. So once it uploads, I'm going to put the glossary in the comments so that maybe people who are not familiar with the terms, they'll know what I'm talking about. So Ra travels in, I would say, a boat, but the boat is actually called the solar bark, BARQUE. So you may see that or hear that, and that's just basically his vehicle or his boat, that he's traveling, doing his soul journey. Um, in. He's taking his journey through the underworld, and we'll start there. But I mean, we'll get there, but we're going to start with light interrupting the natural order. So this again was something that I learned while I was studying hermetics, and not just hermetics. I had a teacher that was teaching me metaphysics and different things like I'm talking about now, years ago. Um, and he would just explain it to me that light interrupts the natural order of darkness, and I'm like, but it all made sense, of course, right? Since according to what we've been taught, whether it's biblically or in even in African cosmology, for the most part, metaphysics, everything that we deal with is that it starts in darkness. Even science says that everything was in this dark existence until the Big Bang Theory, or however um, you know that goes. But the point is, everything, we can all agree for the most part that the origin of humanity and stuff began in darkness, right? So because before we start talking about the light, what was there before we differentiated and manifested world, Kemetic creation traditions speak about the primordial condition, and that's what we're talking about, is about the primordial darkness and even primordial waters. We talk about noon, the darkness, that also, travels through the darkness. And honestly, we're talking about, when we get to noon, we're talking about cosmic water on top of that, right? So we're talking about the limitless, the void, the undifferentiated waters of noon, a condition associated with the unmanifest or the rawness, darkness, in a place that has not yet taken form. Okay, so it's not evil. It's We're not talking about, we haven't even gotten to evil. We're just in a space where it's just this raw existence of darkness and creative potential, and so forth, the void. Um, So darkness itself raises a question for me. What if darkness isn't the interruption? What if light is? Which I've already passed that, but for someone who may have never heard, we started with that, and I was speaking to this as something that we dealt with many years ago, um, in metaphysics, something that was brought to my attention. So I'm asking the audience who may have never heard that or never thought about it, what if darkness isn't the interruption? What if light is? Okay, like what's going on in darkness? I mean, think about a candle. You have to light a candle, right? It requires a wick, it requires fuel, it requires oxygen, it requires conditions necessary to maintain the flame. But darkness requires nothing from a candle. You don't have to turn darkness on. You don't have to feed darkness. You don't have to give darkness oxygen. And eventually the candle burns out. So darkness doesn't have to fight, excuse me, darkness doesn't have to fight to be darkness. This is just something I was thinking about the other day. It's almost like Ra is fighting every day for light to exist. So darkness is, it's almost like, then you would think like, well, why wouldn't God just stop, this darkness or whatever? But that's the that's the nature of the primordial existence, is darkness. So it's not so much that darkness have to fight to be darkness, light have to fight to exist, within the darkness, right? Because the whole battle with even him and Apep is, when Apep swallows the sun, is to block the light or to stop the day, right? So that's when I thought about it. Light is a gift, it's not a giving. We don't see it like that, or we may not think of it like that on a in our modern world, because we know that we feel, since we've been here, we know that light is coming again, or the sun is coming again. And the sun isn't always shining though. So we know that too. Even if the sun rises, there are some days, especially here where I live at in Southeast Texas and places that have bad thunderstorms and things like that. Sometimes it's not, the sun isn't there. The sun isn't shining bright. The sun is dim. So we know those dreary kind of days and things like that. So the sun, in that sense, it's not a given. It's, light is a gift. And even in some places in the world, places like Nova Scotia and I want to say Australia, where it spends, like there's places that stay up to 6 months of darkness without sun. So again, that's like being in Duat energy all the time. But whatever the case, it's like we treat light like an expectation. We expect to be able to see the morning or the rising. We expect illumination every day. We expect to be able to see. And light is important to us. We expect to be able to just see. We need light to just simply see things and move around. And light is important to us. It allows us to see distinction. It allows us to navigate. It allows us to work and build and identify, separate, organize our life, or just our day to day life. In that sense, when I think metaphysically about light, light makes order visible. Light makes order visible. So if we begin with a primordial, undifferentiated condition, and then manifestation emerges from it, maybe the question isn't simply, why does light return to darkness? Another question may be, why does darkness continue to produce light? And if light isn't necessarily a permanent fixation and it has to be continually renewed, then maybe every return of light is something worthy of reverence. Maybe light is not a privilege. Maybe light is an honor. Like I said, a gift. And maybe within the Kemetic sacred narrative, it's a gift that is fought every night to maintain. Now, I'm not speaking this last portion is that we just finished as facts, but think pieces, just what if and maybes, and just things that can just planting seeds that will resonate with you consciously. If it's, if it does, it's something that can open up a thought process and plant seeds to maybe things that we haven't thought about, right? So, part one, before the light, primordial darkness and none. And when I'm talking about none, again, I'm speaking to the primordial water, or the goddess, or the god of um, the primordial water. Okay, it's referred to as Nun, N-U-N, noon, some people say. Um, Before we go any further, let me define a few things. When I say, again, primordial darkness, I'm talking about the undifferentiated, unmanifest condition before order in a ordered world, not evil. None is primordial waters, which I've already spoke about. So I'm gonna move on. And that's again waters that are associated with pre-created condition. And none is important because creation doesn't emerge from some already brightly illuminated, completely organized world. Order emerges from what has not yet been ordered. Now, what am I talking about? I should have said this in the beginning, but I'm speaking to the Kemetic spirituality, ancient Egyptian, schools of thought, framework. This is for those who can resonate with it. I give thanks for anybody coming in to watch and join us for Metaphysical Monday. This is just some think pieces. Some of us hold and actually honor and give reverence to, while others may just be interested in or fascinated with um, this particular, these stories are things surrounding um, Ra are Kemetic rules. So we're kind of into in that for these particular episodes. But I also it's not a set series. So, you guys just yeah, build with me. So again, none is important because creation doesn't emerge from some already brightly illuminated, completely organized world. Um, Order emerges from what has not yet been ordered. So it's the unformed world. Okay. The visible emerges from the concealed, and light emerges where light had not previously manifested. And the importance of this entire conversation is because humans have a tendency to associate darkness with something that is wrong or bad or, something that's just spooky. Something has ended, something has disappeared, something has been taken away, just bad things we go through, something isn't working. So certain events in our life we connect to darkness. But what if darkness also represents a condition from which something can emerge or even reemerge? Emerge and then reemerge. What if what we call nothing is sometimes simply something that has not yet manifested? That brings us to the sun, and it brings us to Ra. Why must Ra traverse darkness? During the day, we see the sun. It traverses the visible sky, but eventually the sun sets in the west. And from the perspective of a human being standing there watching it, the light disappears. But disappearance from our field of vision isn't necessarily secession. It doesn't mean it's gone. And that's important because within Kemetic sacred cosmology, Ra doesn't simply stop existing because beings can't see him anymore. The journey continues. At sunset, Ra enters the hidden nocturnal journey of Duat. And this is where I want to clarify something else. When we call this a descent, because I started thinking about that too. And I'm like, okay, so wouldn't a descent mean like he's going under or going down? But I realized, descent is also outer and inner. That could be a descent. Um, a descent can also be like a state of, like you going into a place like that's unseen or hidden. That's another form of saying a descent. So, plus upper, like, I was kind of joking too, like when you look at Egypt itself, the Nile flows south to north, right? So upper Egypt is in the south, and on most of our modern maps, and lower Egypt is in the north. Okay, so we can't think like that. In this particular descent that Ra takes, he's literally in the sky. So when they even talking about, when we're speaking about the primordial waters and um his journey in Duat on his in this watery terrain or existence, it's like it's in the cosmos because there's water also in our cosmos. So he's really going through a cosmic journey. It's not like the actual ocean, right? So he takes this descent, and it's about entering this hidden realm or the netherworld. It's a place beyond ordinary human visibility. So again, it's just going into what's unseen. And this is where we enter Amduat. And remember, Amduat is just the record or the text that states, what's in Duat. Okay. So Duat is the realm. Amduat again is that which is in Duat. And the name is given to ancient Egyptian composition describing Ra's 12-hour nighttime journey through the realm. And Ra wasn't making his journey by himself. He was literally in his solar bark, and there were certain gods that were assigned to certain hours that traveled with Ra to help him fight and, survive um, some of these tests I call them tests that he has to encounter every night, like being tested, but it's still a part of of the natural cycle. Okay, so So he's in his solar bark, his divine vessel with a company of divine beings. And he even know that you don't travel Duat by yourself. No, no, no. Why does Ra have to go to Duat at all is the real question. Why must light traverse darkness? What happens there that cannot happen in the visible daytime world? Why does the journey take 12 hours? Because once we start looking at the journey, it almost begins to feel as if light is being negotiated through darkness. Not negotiated in the sense that the ancient text uses that exact word, but this is just my way of saying it. It's like, he's going, he has to. It's like, this is what he does every night within this, in these 12 hours, according to the Kemetic spirituality. And the Amduat, he goes into this space. It's a given. He's going to return every night. So it's like he has to go there, and it feels like almost like negotiating. And that's just my way of saying it for to relate and make it under what others can relate. But because it's crazy is it's like because yesterday's light doesn't simply exempt today's light from the renewal. So he still has to go back and do the same thing again. Okay. So Ra descends, Ra travels, Ra encounters, Ra is challenged, then Ra is regenerated. And only then does the renewed sun emerge after he goes through this regeneration period. So let's look at what happens during those 12 hours. Now, I do have like another list here where it kind of goes through what kind of happens hour to hour. But in what I wrote originally, we just kind of grouped it, because I didn't want it to be extra, extra long. But if anybody is interested, or if time permits, because we've already been on we've been on at a good time, but it just depends on how long it takes me to get through this information. Um, we can reimagine Ra's journey. Like I could literally do a build on that, like on a different day that just really goes through the hours. Um, or we could just rock with this, and or I could put some of it in the comments if you guys like. Just let me know. Anyway, so part 3, the 12 hours of rock. I'm not going to turn every hour into a 30-minute lecture because that would take too long, and that's why I did it this way. What matters tonight is the movement of the journey. But I also don't want to reduce this journey to a list. I want us to feel the movement through Duat. Imagine watching the final edge of the sun disappear into the western horizon. Above ground, night is beginning. But Ra has entered another world. Duat is not simply an empty black cavern. It is populated. It has sacred geography with regions, divine beings, the dead, guardians, dangers, and forces that will assist or threaten the continuation of this solar journey. This is literally the journey of the soul. When we're talking about the soul, we're talking about the sun, solar, and the sun is connected to soul, right? So we're talking about it on a cosmic level. This is what he does every night to regenerate the soul or to be able to shine and to, create this um, regeneration that allows the sun to shine every day, right? So when we're talking about even humans, in according to Kemetic spirituality, humans will also go through Duat. So just understanding these realms, um, and even if you're looking at it from a metaphorical standpoint, because you may even hear some things that's familiar to Christians and what they speak about in hell. So you can kind of understand. Well, for those that know that a lot of the Christianity was inspired, plagiarized, stolen. Some of it was taken from older texts, other ancient texts, such as uh, Egypt for sure, and Kemetic spirituality, and Greek and different things. I think Greek and Roman, which the Greeks also learned in Egypt. So, but anyway, another subject for another day. Let's continue here. So Ra's in another world. We're entering somewhere. You're not entering a nothing space. This is a world again that has its own gates, boundaries, gates, boundaries, divine beings, dangers, so forth and so on. Doors. So the first 1 to 3 hours is entering the hidden realm. So the first hours begin the transition from the visible world into Duat. Ra enters the nocturnal realm with his divine company, the gods, and moves progressively deeper into it. Already something has changed. The people can no longer see the sun, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. What disappears from sight is not necessarily that it ceased to exist. Remember that. But that's going to matter when we start talking about our own lives. And Ra moves deeper, and as Ra moves deeper, the world becomes increasingly unfamiliar. The open sky of daytime is gone, or the daytime world is gone. We're entering sacred territory associated with death, transformation, hidden beings, and powers that ordinary human sight does not encounter during the day. And then the terrain itself changes. So while everybody is, getting off from work, going home, going into their houses, made their groceries or whatever they do during that period, Ra is entering into Duat. Okay. So then that's the first 1 to 3 hours, and then we go to the fourth and fifth hours. Just remember, Duat starts at 6 p.m. This is not exact because the Egyptians have the way they map them out, but this is roughly like 6 p.m. So we're talking about the first 1 to 3 hours. We're talking about 6, 7, 8. So between like 9 and 10 is when the terrain changes. Um, we enter a particularly strange portion of the journey associated with Sokar, a funerary and netherworld deity. The terrain changes. This is not ordinary sailing anymore. Remember, he's in a bark or a boat, right? But now, even the terrain has changed on him. The environment is different. The landscape becomes restrictive and difficult. The solar bark cannot simply continue to move through this region the same way it moved before. So when he first get in, he has like this. He's going through this unfamiliar terrain. He meets with these certain guardians or whatever. They let him in. He's welcomed in, and then he goes through, and then he ends up in this difficult terrain where his bark, I mean, it's not even in water anymore at this point. The terrain becomes difficult. It's like being in a desert existence. The familiar waterway is disrupted. So these are different things that he's fighting in order to get through this space of Duat, or this journey. So the imagery becomes so increasingly strange, dry, restrictive. It's almost like caverns, it's cavernous, that type of territory, winding passages in serpentine form. So it gets really narrow, and he's in this, boat in this desert type terrain. So these are what's documented as the real experiences that he goes through, right? And then some when you really get into it. Um, so then this is what Rod's going through. So he goes through this. So we're far removed from the brilliant sky that Ra enters and travels during the day. This is the funerary territory. This is where death, the funerary text and territory is. And the vessel that carried Ra into Duat can no longer simply move through it. This region it's no longer can move this way. So it has to be clever even in how he moves this bark or this vessel as he's in this space that is working against him, or this terrain that is turned against him or working against him. So it's like you have a vehicle and you understand how the vehicles move. And it's carried you this far, and then suddenly you're somewhere where you can't drive your car. You can't move. So this is where he's at. It's not well, you can move, but not according to the ordinary rules. Okay. So now the question is no longer where am I going? The question is how do I move here? How do I get out of this? Because he still has to go through, he has hours left of this nighttime journey. So what happens when the vehicle carried you this far, but now um but cannot carry you through the terrain that you're entering? Because sometimes we think we're stuck because we're failing. Sometimes we think, why can't I move? Why can't I move how I used to move? Why isn't this working anymore? Why can't I get through this way, or this last thing, or the way I got through this last thing or this last situation? Because maybe the terrain changed. So that's the human lesson. When you start to feel like in life, why am I stuck? I was moving smooth selling, everything was going good, and all of a sudden everything is difficult, and what I was speaking to is maybe the terrain change, sometimes the environment change, sometimes, what worked at first no longer works in this space. It doesn't mean it's not going to work at all, but just in this particular space is no longer working. The environment's become stranger. But regardless to what happened, Ra had to continue on the journey. The journey could even become more, this becomes more demanding for him, and still he moves deeper. So now we're in also in hour five. I kind of just went through 4 and 5, but I went in my other writings. Like I said, I could just do a short form video if you guys just want to go deeper into more detail of what he was encountering. But also in these hours, hour 5, he encountered the lake of fire also. Okay, so we talked about the caverns and how the journey was getting skinny or narrow and hard for him to move in his bark. So then he encounters this lake of fire with serpents and different things. They were just all of these worlds that he's going through. So then he goes to hour 6, the deepest point in the regenerative center. When we arrive around the deepest point of the journey, this is when things become extremely interesting. This is the regenerative center associated with Ra and Osiris, or Asar. So Osiris, he meets up with Osiris every night in this journey, and this is the only way. And he's the Osiris is connected with death and the underworld. He's connected with this Duat energy, and Ra is connected with light, but he has to get with his father, who's connected with death in the underworld, in order to regenerate. And that I found very interesting, that in order for this sun or this light to regenerate, it has to connect with the deity of death in the underworld. Remember what we talked about. Darkness is the natural order. Light emerged from darkness, right? So So at the deepest point of night, this is when the regeneration occurs. So now we're probably like at 12 o'clock, midnight, right? So the regeneration occurs. So think about that, though. The place that looks like death can also become a dwelling place of regeneration. What comes out of the death vibration and frequency is also the place that life or light is being regenerated. That doesn't mean that suffering is automatically good. It doesn't mean that every loss was supposed to happen. Every death is something that we need to romanticize: death, pain, grief, or destruction. I'm not saying that at all. We're not walking around like, oh yeah, let's, just be a death cult. No. But what it does mean, because see, death is a natural part of life. That's something that people run from and don't want to talk about, because really, Duat is the world of the dead, right? But Ra is going there as life, as a sun, and like I said, the light is dimming as he's going deeper and deeper in Duat, but he's regenerating himself to be this light again. This, um the light that we encounter every day, despite if it's bright or a day that it's not shining as bright. Um so what it does mean, however, is that not that we romanticize death or pain or loss or destruction or grief, but that death and regeneration are not always strangers to each other. Think about that. Okay. Sometimes something is regenerating in the very place that something else has ended. Sometimes the ground looks dead and is holding something we cannot yet see. And that makes me think, makes me ask, what does Ra receive from Duat? I wanted to know that, like, okay, he's going to Duat, and that's why I had to read deeper to understand this regeneration process. Like, why is he doing this? Why does he have to go down here every night? Why is it his job to make the sun shine? you know, but because maybe Duat isn't simply something he survives. Maybe it's something that he requires us there. And the more I sit with that, the more important this meeting between Ra and Asar, Osiris, becomes to me. Ra brings the solar principle, which is light, heat, movement, visibility, life, And then Asar carries Asaru. He carries the mystery of death, the hidden realm, regeneration, and the renewed existence. So at the deepest point of night, these principles meet: light and darkness. Light meets death at the deepest point of night, and the result is regeneration. It's not extinction. It doesn't even extinguish each other. It regenerates. That's the paradox. And inside that paradox, new light becomes possible. And as I travel through this story in my own imagination, I can almost see Ra, a visible solar force, becoming more withdrawn the deeper he travels, just going deeper into this space, or deeper into this space of darkness. And the light withdrawing, like the light getting dimmer. That's how I actually seen it. Like, okay, he's coming in, the light is still bright. Now it's like about 6 p.m. And then as he's going through this realm, it gets darker and darker and darker until he regenerates at midnight. And then, slowly the light begins to be reborn again. And that's when we have morning, or what we call rising, right? It's interesting, and as conscious people will say, I don't like the term good morning. I like to use grand rising, but that's an interesting. The morning and the rising is interesting. Since the morning and the rising meets, that's just, I'm not saying that's law, but that's how I see it. It's like, the death, what's ending, and the rising is at a, they come to a point of meeting. Okay, so he already has spent his whole day shining. He has crossed the visible sky. This is what I'm talking about. Once he's been in this dark abyss, but this is what's happened where he comes from, this light, or what he's returning to. He's already spent the day shining. He has crossed the visible sky and he has set in the west. He has entered Duat, and he has traversed increasingly strange and difficult terrains. And now at the deepest point, he encounters the regenerative principle of Asar. Remember the candle? What I spoke about, when the flame has to be sustained, it doesn't simply continue to burn forever because it burned yesterday. Even when we have 5-day candles and 7-day candles, eventually it's going to end, right? It has to be regenerated, relit. Something has to continue to sustain it. And that makes me wonder whether this is another way of understanding why Ra has to go into Duat. I was thinking, like, he has this ball of sun and it lasts 12 hours, but, is it a thing that only shines, it can only shine for a period before the battery lowers or weakens. I know it's not a battery, but just speaking of the charge, the soul charge. Before the soul charge, shout out to my boy Soul Charge too, and RIP to him. We lost him recently. But it just reminded me of that idea, the soul charge, and it's like the soul charge has to be regenerated in this space. So then maybe Duat is part of how light becomes capable of shining again. And the regeneration was simply automatic. Why this entire journey? Like, if light was just naturally supposed to come, why would he even go through Duat? Why would this even be necessary? Why the trials? Why the difficult terrains? Why the ordeal between setting and rising? Ra doesn't simply disappear in the west and immediately appear renewed in the east. He has to traverse. He has to go through and navigate and encounter all of these different parts of Duat. So maybe his regeneration it's not merely something that happens to Ra, but it's one of the sacred gifts contained within the journey. He has traversed all of this to become the sun again. So now yesterday's sun, not yesterday's sun, but the renewed sun. He's not yesterday's sun, it's not today's sun as far as when it sets and rises again. It's a new, it's regenerated, a new light. Yesterday is not today. So understanding it from that context, the renewed sun. So the sun is capable of another rising, and that also makes me think about rest. You know, Not that Ra's actually literally laying down sleeping, but like I said, at a peak of, all of this energy he's giving off in the daytime, the sun rising at its highest peak and um sustaining the daytime. Um, so this is an obviously an active journey. Maybe there is a rest principle inside this rhythm. And even before he actually regenerates, that is a rest period. After he meets up with Osiris, he doesn't just automatically uh come out and shine again. And as we know, even at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, what we call in the South 4 day in the morning or 4 day in the morning, meaning it's before day, but it's still the morning. So you know you're still dealing with darkness. You're still navigating the darkness until about 6 a.m. You know. Anyway, and see what it says. Maybe there's a rest principle inside of this rhythm. Because even the brightest thing is going to have to withdraw at some point. And we do it ourselves. We expend energy throughout our day. We work, we think, we speak, we create, we give energy all the time, whether we're at work or at home or just dealing with people, talking with people. And then we give all of this energy outward, and then eventually we withdraw. We get tired. We need to rest. We sleep, and sleep isn't useless time. It's a process of what we need to do to what regenerate ourselves, and it's generally in nighttime, like how Rod's going through his journey, right? We are also, and some of us stay up, but during that period of, that's why they always tell us that how important sleep is. And in the conscious community, we're told by the master teachers that it's important to get that melanin at night, get that get those downloads, get that drip, that melanin drip, that regeneration of your mind, of your creative potential, and get that rest. Because of course the daytime, and that's a whole nother study, dealing with it from the basis of serotonin versus melatonin, like this day versus night type energy. But anyway, now how long have I been going? Not an hour yet. This is a longer live, but because I wanted to share a dream portion with you guys, and if time permits, I will. If not, I'll just go ahead and make it a standalone video, and maybe I also will do the Ra, go deeper into the journey of Ra, like by the hours, each 12 hour what he is encountering. If I get anybody that's interested in that, and then I can go into the dream code. If I have time, I'll do it tonight, but the dream part. So we'll get back to that, okay? So sleep isn't useless time. Sleep is a part of what makes tomorrow possible. And I'm speaking to it even from the space of Ra. Like if it's a space where Duat also brings a form of rest for that regeneration. Um, there may be things that we receive through withdrawal, even us humans, that cannot be received while we are constantly performing in the light. And I even with dreams, I think that's so important because I really feel that dreams are very important. Of course, we all have all different styles and types of dreams, but these ones that are prophetic are the ones that are warnings, are the ones showing you things. You need sleep to get that. There's a lot of downloads and things that are revealed that you will need on your soul journey that comes through dreams. Okay, so sleep is the cousin of death. That idea also came to mind because Mayat, I mean, not Mayat, I apologize. I didn't mean to say Mayat. I wanted to say because Duat are those types of places when you talk about the underworld and talk about death and sleep, that same, it takes a same level of surrender. Like sleep really do take surrender. That's why sometimes when they say children fight in their sleep, or even we can fight our sleep. Because sometimes when children, I use children as an example, because sometimes they're like, oh, I'm scared to go to sleep, or they may think they're missing something. Adults know how important sleep is. But sometimes children, oh, I'm gonna have a bad dream, or just whatever it is. Because, and like I said again, even for adults, but it takes a great deal. We just do it naturally, but sleep is a form of surrender. Just like when you decide to ride an airplane, and you're in this form of surrender when you can't stop, the journey. You have to kind of just traverse it, right? Or go through it, or sleep is the same way. It's just you're in a space of It's like a form, it's a freedom in sleep, right? Especially when you can sleep good. You're not carrying a whole bunch of heaviness. That goes back to like the ma'at energy. You're not controlling or carrying a whole bunch of heaviness, and you can sleep easy. When you can't sleep easy, that heart and that feather is not lining up. And I'm speaking to, we talking about ma'at. The judgment day deals with, or the judgment part of Duat even deals with the human heart, our heart being weighed against the feather of ma'at, which is the feather of truth. And of course, a heavy heart, it doesn't survive. A met eats it. The a being that also dwells in Duat, in this place. It's a hippopotamus type being. But that's for, I don't want to get off subject, so let me keep going. So maybe Duat isn't the interruption of the solar cycle. Maybe Duat is part of the mechanism of the solar cycle. Maybe the sun doesn't go into Duat because something went wrong. Maybe the sun goes into Duat because that's part of how the light is renewed. Okay? Regeneration is not the end of the journey, but what has been regenerated still has to make it through. And that brings us to APEP. Mm. So after he meets up with Osiris and starts his regeneration process and all of this, we now encounter Apep or Apophis. And this is a different type of being that when we speak about Nun, and Nut is actually, and I didn't bring up Nut today, but Nut is where the entrance of his journey begins in the mouth of Nut. So it's like you're actually traveling through a cosmic body or Nut's cosmic body, and all these things. And Duat is taking place in the cosmic body of Nut, which represents, the sky and the cosmos, and even as the waters of Noon or Nun is contained within Nut, are the primordial, um, the star. Excuse me, the star goddess are the primordial. I'm not confused with it. Just so much. It's so much. I want to just say that it gets, the primordial water is Nun. So that's contained within the goddess or deity Nun. I'm gonna just leave it there. Okay. So let's get to Apep. So now we encounter Apep or Apophis, and this is the great serpent associated, is a threat to Ra's journey, along with Isfat, disorder, and disruption of cosmic order. And I want to go back to Nun because again, we're dealing with primordial darkness. I don't want to get that confused with evil. Now, we talk about Apep, we are talking about evil. We are talking about that type of darkness, someone who is he carries Isfet, and Isfet is chaos. So it's like his whole nature is destroying the light or destroying Ra's journey so that he can't regenerate the next day, so that we don't have daytime. We have almost like eternal darkness all the time. So he's fighting this is a cosmic happening. He's fighting this serpent being in order to make sure the sun is rising. Okay, this could even be the fight between day and night. Who knows? Like writing that little, night becoming day and day becoming night. I like to kind of have a mental picture of things so we can, see how it associates with our reality in our modern world, right? So anyway, so SFAT is with all that APEP is about, is this SFAT energy. So that's disorder, disruption of the cosmic order. It's that disorder and disruption. He's full of chaos. Um, so APEP is really, I didn't want us to be confusing again primordial darkness with evil, because they're definitely not the same. So darkness itself is not APEP. None is not APEP, and Duat is not APEP. APEP is a part of the energy of Isfet, energy of chaos. When we talk about none, we're speaking of the darkness that deals with the void. Remember the primordial darkness, the unformed darkness, right? So there's nothing evil about that inherently. That's the natural order that light emerged from. This is where our creativity comes from. It's like, the cosmic womb. But then when we talk about Apep or the energy of Esfet, he is all about destroying the light principle, or light, stop light from shining. He doesn't want light, he tries to swallow the sun or swallow Ra in his whole bark or boat so that he cannot regenerate and give us light the next day. So we already see he's fighting to keep, this darkness in place. But every night Ra is defeating him, and then we have our sun rise, right? So within his journey of darkness, there are forces that threaten continuation. Ra's journey has to continue. The solar cycle must continue. Ma'at, truth, balance, right order, cosmic and social order must be maintained. But let's stop here, because APEP is not just some big snake that Ra happens to encounter. APEP threatens the continuation itself, as I was saying. Ra has already traversed the difficult terrain. He has reached the regenerative center. Renewal is underway, and now something threatens to prevent that renewal from reaching its completion. And APEP is is what obstructs the solar journey. Imagine that scene. We're deep in the realm of the living that the living cannot see. Excuse me. We're deep within a realm the living cannot see. So we're in the underworld. The visible world is far behind us. Ra has already traversed this strange territory of Sokar. He's already fought with this awful terrain where he can't move. He's dealt with snakes and other tests and trials and everything. He meets with Asar, gets regenerated, and now after his regeneration with his father, and the Norman Serpentine force stands against the continuation of the solar cycle. So it's almost like, oh, you thought you got away. Like I said, it's still dark. Just because he's at this high point of midnight in the earlier parts of morning or the rising, it's still dark. So it's almost like before you go, you got another beast to encounter. Now, and APEP is vicious. He's a massive energy. He's not just, something that to be ignored. He works actively to destroy this journey of Ra. Okay. So even when we talk about the energy grids, y'all, you gotta sometimes be like, okay, who's the apeps in my life? You know, and that's deep. When you really think about your human life as in the darkness that we go through, like we spoke about in the last Metaphysical Monday, when we speaking of us going through a form of Duat, you got to look at those things that block your obstacle when we're talking about the energy grid. Who is the Apophis or APEP in your life? What is this environment or difficult terrain that is now impossible for you to progress in? You get what I'm saying? What is this darkness that you must still continue to journey through, with a little light? Sometimes we are in these spaces, but we know we got to keep pushing. We have to in order to keep regenerating, or they'll put your light out. You never accomplish the things you want, right? So Ra does not face APEP or confront APEP alone. He does have his divine companions with him, and the beings accompanying him participate in overcoming and restraining the serpent. So they're all fighting. You got Aset, Isis. The great of magic is among the divine powers involved in subduing Apep in the Amduite tradition. So they talk about Aset in the Amduite tradition and the magic that she had and the incantations, because that's what they're doing. You have to know names of guardians and gates and certain riddles and certain things that you have to know. In this space, it's like knowledge is everything when you are in Duat. Knowledge is life when you're in Duat. So they're being basically tested at a soul level of things they should know. Certain names that open up doors and things like that. So they basically every time Apep is restrained, bound, and rendered powerless. And then across Egyptian religious traditions, the imagery sounding or surrounding the defeat of Apep can become extremely violent. Okay, so he's pierced, he's cut, attacked, ritually destroyed. It's bad. Because this force is attempting to stop a solar journey, this is a big deal. So it has to be neutralized in order for the continuation to occur. Apep introduces another mystery. He isn't simply defeated once and erased from existence forever. The cycle repeats. Night comes again. Ra travels again, which means Ma'at has to be maintained. That's another thing. Once we fight a battle or fight for order, order has to constantly be maintained, where chaos really doesn't. The same with darkness and not having to be like a light has to be relit, but darkness doesn't have to fight to exist. It just is, you know. Anyway, there it is right there. Darkness doesn't have to fight to be darkness, but light has to fight to exist. Okay. So let's see where we are. Okay, so we're almost through these hours, and I'm more than likely stop there because it's a lot. It's a lot. Just like last time was a lot. And we are right at just at an hour, so I'm not gonna let it go more than another 30 minutes. So he's talking about maintaining my eye in balance, right? So darkness doesn't have to fight to be darkness. Light has to fight to exist. But now we understand something else. The fight isn't necessarily against darkness. The regeneration happened in darkness. And the encounter with Asar happened in darkness. The transformation is happening in darkness. So the fight is what would prevent the transformation from reaching complete. So the fight is against what would prevent this transformation from reaching completion. Okay, this is what they're fighting about. Like I said, it's pretty important. Um, in order for us to regenerate or the sun to regenerate itself and to give light. So the hours between these are the 8th and 11th hours. So these are like the last hours, before you get to 6 a.m. These are like the last hours of regeneration and preparation. The journey continues. The transformation is underway. The inhabitants of Duat participate in the cosmic process. The threats are overcome, renewal continues, the movement towards emergence intensifies. We're getting closer to dawn, but we're not yet there. And this matters because sometimes regeneration happens before manifestation. Something can already be changing before you could actually see the evidence of change. And again, how we can use that in our everyday lives. So APEP has been subdued, but the sun still hasn't risen yet. Okay, so overcoming the great obstruction is not the same as completing the journey. Ra continues through the hidden regions. The inhabitants of Duat are not merely scenery around him. Ra's passage brings solar presence into this hidden world, while Duat itself remains a part of the process through which Ra is renewed. And as we move toward the 10th and 11th hours, something beautiful begins to happen. Yeah, in Duat. Preparation for emergence. Above ground, it is still night. The human being looking at the sky still doesn't see the sun. Like I say, this is 4 day in the morning before daylight actually emerges through the night. Okay. So we're getting into the day, but it's still night. But inside this hidden process, movement towards dawn is already underway. So the morning or rising begins before morning or rising is visible. That's important because sometimes we think manifestations begins only when we see it. But what we're seeing may simply be the visible evidence of a process that began long before it reached our eyes. Kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel. You can see it, but you still got to get through the tunnel, that liminal space. That's a form of a feeling of being in this. Well, I won't say it's as bad as being in Duat, but a tunnel can be, likened to that darkness and this space in between time. So now we're in hour 12, which is the last hour, and this is 6 a.m. And eventually we reach the final hour. The solar journey moves toward completion. The renewed sun prepares to emerge into the visible world again. Morning, dawn, light. But now, after traveling through these 12 hours, morning doesn't look quite as ordinary. The sun doesn't simply come back. Something happened in the darkness. And that's the part that we have to remember, that this renewal, the renewed solar form moves toward the eastern horizon. Okay? So it moved. It's not in the same place it entered. We encountered the Kepri or the scarab, the becoming sun, and the renewed solar manifestation associated with dawn. The sun that disappeared in the west is preparing again to emerge in the east. And eventually, the hidden journey becomes visible. Then we see the sun, right? Light appears, the sun rises, but sunrise is not where the regeneration began. Sunrise is where the regeneration became visible. And after traveling with Ra through Duat, and that ordinary sunrise begins to look different. He traversed. Ra traversed. I wanted to say transformed, that too. The terrain changed. Ra reached the regenerative center. He encountered Osiris or Asar. He fought with Apep, the threatened continuation, and the threat was overcome. Renewal continued. Preparation and emergence occurred, and then light returns. Okay, so that's a long journey, and I reiterated some of it. Just if someone have questions, I might have missed something. Um, so I'm gonna end on. I wanted to go longer, but this, like I said, it's a lot. So we're getting to the last parts of what we want to go over. The human journey through Duat when we die. This is why I spoke to Duat too again, because it mirrors for those who may some people subscribe to this school of thought. I do. Some of it is metaphorical to people. Some refer to it as mythos or just allegories. But however you take it, this is good information and a good um, it's a good blueprint or framework, even when you're thinking of the journey of the human soul, right? So the human journey through Duat when we die. Before I move into what Duat means to us metaphorically while we're still living, there's another journey we need to talk about. Because when I ask why do humans go through Duat, I don't mean only the difficult periods of our life. I'm talking about death. What happens when a deceased enters the afterlife journey? So the ancient Egyptians or Kemetic funerary religion prepared the deceased for this passage. They was always preparing for death because they understood how important that journey was. So even when they lived in life, even going through the day, their whole clock, we didn't go through the clock of daylight. We went through the clock of nighttime once the day is done. But it's constant things. That's why every hour through Duat, it dealt with different deities and traveling companions, certain beings that he had to encounter, um, and this different changes that takes place through the clock or through the time of, and they took that stuff very seriously. So preparing for death was the same way. Okay, they understood the real journey. So ancient Egyptian funerary religion prepared the deceased for passage. There were funerary texts, spells, sacred names, protective formulas, gates, guardians, divine beings, and so forth. Knowledge mattered a lot. And of course, there was dangers. Magic mattered a lot. They put a heavy emphasis on things such as knowledge and magic and ritual work. Knowing where you were and what you were encountering mattered. So understanding, imagine entering into this realm as a human soul. Imagine entering into this realm as a soul. The ordinary landmarks of the living world are gone. You are entering a sacred geography inhabited by gods and spirits of the dead. Yeah, that's kind of scary, wouldn't it be? You are a living soul and you're just passing away or dying, and now you're going into a new realm, a new world with new rules, new beings. Um, so it's like now knowledge isn't just something that knowledge has always been power. That's what we're taught here. And some people really don't understand how powerful and just what exactly and how deep that really goes. Knowledge is power. But when you are in the realm of Duat, knowledge itself becomes a form of protection. This is how the Bible says our people will pass away from lack of knowledge. In Duat, you really could. In Duat, knowledge is everything, and without it, you won't be able to traverse through through Duat. Some of this knowledge is soul knowledge, not necessarily stuff that we did just on planet Earth, but things that was always there traveling with us on Earth that we should know on a soul level. Do you remember? You know, like, do you remember the time? Do you remember? Anyway, who stands before you? Do you know their name? Do you know what is required? Do you possess the necessary knowledge to continue the journey? Can you pass? In that sense, yes, there are tests and trials within the human afterlife journey. Not a school examination, but encounters where successful passage depends upon what you know, on what you can say, how you respond, and ultimately, who have you become through the life you've lived? Okay? And eventually we come to Ma'at, the weighing of the heart. So the deceased comes before judgment. The heart is weighed against the feather associated with Ma'at. And of course, Ma'at deals with truth, justice, balance, right order, cosmic order, just to name a few things, okay? Um, Balance, I already said balance. It has it's connected to the Ankh and the male and female principle and mathematics and accuracy and so forth. Okay, so and the heart also matters profoundly in my eye because you may have left the physical world, but your life enters the room with you. Your actions have weight. Your character has weight. Your relationship to my eye has weight. That's why it's good to still look at our 42 guilty confessions or the 42 laws of my eye. And it wasn't, was it called the guilty confessions? The meta calls it something else, something like that. It might, I may be saying it wrong, I'm not sure. But if you know 42 guilty confessions or the 42 laws of my eye, if there's another thing, that way that they say it and you know it, then please share in the comments, you guys. So anyway, so once we get to the courtroom, if you will, or into the scales or in front of the scales, um Anubis will be attending to the scales. Okay. So as everything is being weighed out, Thought or Tahuti records the results, and Asar Osiris proceeds over judgment. So it's really like a court when they talk about Judgment Day and all of these things that we've always heard within spiritual and religious um, consequences, if you will, and the judgment is a part of that, even in religion, right? So the deceased makes declarations concerning the life they live. So you're petitioning your life now. Yeah, the negative, there it is right there. This is commonly called the negative confessions. That's what I said, guilty confessions. I wanted to say negative confessions. So here it is. I have it here in my notes. Associated with the 42 assessors, okay? So that would be, again, the laws of my and nearby awaits Amit, which we spoke about. Amit is the, I just spoke about him a little bit ago, the one who devours the heart. It is the crocodile, part crocodile. I said hippopotamus earlier, but he's part lion, part hippopotamus, and part crocodile. He got a crocodile face. He may have a build or a farm. I don't know. He's all of those mixed together. I know he has a lion mane, and I want to say his face may be a hippopotamus and his body is an alligator or a crocodile. I'm not really sure, you guys. It's a lot. But if the heart fails the judgment, Amit consumes it. And I wouldn't just simply say, oh, this is the Egyptian hell. I mean, you could look at it like that, but it's so much going on there. It's so much life going on there. It's and you know, the consequence is more fundamental. And continuation is at stake. Okay. So the justified deceased can continue toward transformation existence. And that gives us two different journeys through the hidden realm. Ra must traverse and the deceased must traverse. Ra encounters obstacles, difficult terrains, and opposition. The deceased encounters guardians, requirements, dangers, and judgment. Ra travels with divine assistance. The deceased is equipped with sacred knowledge, magic, and protection. Ra undergoes regeneration, and the justified deceased moves towards transformation, existence, and different journeys. I'm sorry, the justified deceased, and justified deceased meaning the ones who pass the test of the scales. They continue to move through and go on. So the justified deceased moves toward transformed existence. Now, these are different journeys that are even responsibilities that Rob versus the deceased human is encountering. but both must confront the mystery of continuation and what that means. Death does not necessarily mean movement has ended. Things are still going on, okay? So we might have already answered this, but this last part goes into um that's not the very last part, but it says, why do we go into Duat? So now I'm moving into from the ancient sacred narrative into a metaphysical application because I'm not only interested in what Ra does, I'm interested in what this sacred story can provoke us to ask about ourselves. Why do we go into periods of darkness? Why do we experience descent? Why do we experience those places where we cannot see where we're going? And what is the purpose of Duat? And again, I'm using Duat here metaphorically or metaphysically, excuse me, as a framework for thinking about our own periods of descent, of concealment, transition, and regeneration. So I want to ask, why do we go into Duat? What are we supposed to receive there? Who accompanies us? And what happens when our normal way of moving no longer works? What has to end? What is being regenerated? And what do we learn in a place where we cannot see clearly? And what do we bring back? How have we been changed? Because maybe darkness isn't empty. Maybe the absence of visible evidence doesn't mean an absence of movement. Maybe some things have developed outside of our field of vision. And that's difficult for human beings because we like evidence. We like proof. We like to know and be certain. We want to see something, you know. Show me the money, show me the relationship, show me the opportunity, so forth and so on. Show me the healing, show me something. And when we can't see it, we start assuming that nothing is happening. But look at Ra. From the perspective of the human being standing above ground, the sun is gone. We don't see the sun, it's gone, right? But from the perspective of the sacred narrative, an entire journey is underway and taking place. And there's this, and this is where another thought enters for me, you know, like how Paul said in the Bible, we die daily. And then we know that the sun sets. We lie down. We withdraw from ordinary waking consciousness. We sleep. And sleep is the cousin of death. We enter another condition. And very often we dream. Whoo, you guys, that was a lot to get through. Anybody that taps into this, I've been seeing people coming in and out. I want to give thanks to you and your energy. Um, I probably won't be doing a live like this for a while, but this particular subject and stuff, because I know it is deep, and I just like I said, anyone uh, that enjoyed it or got into it, or for those of you who may have gotten lost in it, you can always rewind it or receive it when you're ready for it. Um, I was rushing through a lot of this stuff because I know it's a lot of information. I think that I'm going to preserve my dreams for another day because what I wanted to talk about is, yeah, the ancient Kemetics took dreams very seriously. Dreams was definitely a part, especially just African people in general, indigenous people in general, Asians, natives, most people, early humans really, really took their dreams seriously. And when you're talking about African spirituality, and the Kemetics in general, dreams were very powerful. So, and we'll talk about the dreams, okay? I think I'm gonna leave this, like I said, I'm gonna leave this portion because this is still a lot, and I don't want to glaze over it. This is actually really exciting. So, and things that other people can relate to. So we're gonna continue this. It won't be next Metaphysical Monday. I'm gonna continue it this week. But I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna just start from the dream portion and just make it a different video because it's a lot. So we'll start with some of the things that have happened to me and how you can get pulled into it's a form of a duat as well, but it's a lot to explain, so I'm not gonna go into it. I'm just gonna say this. Get ready to bring your dream experiences. Be open to listen to the world of my dreams. I have my dream book up here. I'll show it a lot, but I haven't even logged this dream yet because this dream is what actually inspired me to do these builds that I've been doing as of late with the with speaking of Duat. It's the place that I was taken to in the dream. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that piece because again, I want to speak about the Kemetic relationship with dreams and their dream book and the Egyptian dream book. It's called the Ramesside dream book, preserved on papyrus. Chester Beatty the third. So we'll get into some of the things that's within the dream book. So the next part that we do, the part two of this live is going to be called Dream Messages, Symbols, and Consciousness. Okay, and then I will also go into why I keep a dream journal and just some of the powerful things that happen through dreams. You know, we got all kind of different ones, but there's certain things and keys that come through dreams. So I'm gonna just end on this since I didn't got it out there and got it started. For those of you who may see the dreams increasing during this period, this is a great time to tap into your dreams, to remember them. If you want to talk about them or just whatever, I analyze dreams. I do a lot of dream work and things like that. We just had that solar eclipse recently too. I think it was August the 12th or something, and it was in the sign of Leo. Okay, so a lot of shifts been happening in Leo energy also. So I have a lot more to share with you guys. I am also doing a pop-up live this week on Erica Badu's new song, The Witch Doctor. We're going to be looking at the lyrics of The Witch Doctor, examining them. That's going to be a fun live. So you guys make sure you tap in. I'll let you know it's a pop-up live, so just set your notifications, and we're going to be talking about the miseducation, spells, symbols, and symbology of Baduology. Okay, you guys, and this again is we're going to talk about a little bit about Erica Badu in general, and then shift into this. Really is led by her lyrics to the new song Witch Doctor. It's been 16 years since she dropped the album, so she's dropped a couple of singles. Like last year, I didn't find out about it until recently. Echoes 19 that she did for Amazon Music. But she also has a new song she dropped out on August 28th called The Witch Doctor. So this week we will be tapping into her lyrics. So you guys, if you're an Erica Badu fan, if you're an Erica Badu hater, skeptic, or just a person that's interested in what I'm talking about, make sure y'all tap in. And I give thanks for everybody again who will be watching, who has watched. Thank you to all my new subscribers. And you guys be peace. Ashe.